All right, let's sing this song. This one, because this is our hymn today. Yeah.
I don't need Connor.
I'm not saying.
I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene, and wonder how he could love me, a sinner condemned unclean. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. For me it was in the garden, he prayed, not my will but thine. He had no tears for his own grief, but sweat drops of blood for mine. And oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. In pity, angels beheld him and came from the world of light to strengthen him in the sorrows he bore for my soul that night. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. He took my sins and my sorrows and made them his very own. He bore the burden to Calvary and suffered and died alone. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. When with the ransomed in glory his face I at last shall see, 'twill be my joy through the ages to sing of his love for me. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. Oh, how marvelous, oh, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me.
Yeah, I knew that one. I didn't recognize it, so I got.
I have heard it before.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I heard that before.
What's up?
Huh?
Pretty straightforward one too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, how marvelous.
We're not there yet.
How wonderful.
I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene.
Jesus. Wow.
How accurate is that?
Yes.
Not very accurate, yeah. Because we don't stand in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene. If anything, we stand in the presence of the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Trinity, right? But that's the second person of the Trinity. And he sits at the right hand of the throne of God right now, so we don't stand in his presence right now. But that's okay.
How does the quote go? Where 3 or more gather,
2 or more.
2 or
More
more gather,
there I will be.
there I will be. Was Jesus who said that? Or-
Yeah.
So we do stand in the presence of Jesus, Stephen.
Well,
He sends his Holy Spirit.
But he doesn't say we stand amazed in the presence. He says I, which implies one person. Ooh, burn.
And wonder how he could love me, a sinner condemned unclean. Yeah.
How could he love a sinner like me?
Yeah. So marvelous, wonderful. How much is it that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my song will be like this forever.
Oh, how
I'll
marvelous.
always
Oh, how
stand in
wonderful is my
amazement.
Savior's love for me. Yeah, exactly. For me it was in the garden he prayed, not my will but thine. He had no tears for his own griefs, but sweat drops of blood for mine.
That happened.
Yeah. Right?
Gee.
When he's in the garden, and he's like saying, it's possible let this cup pass from me, but not my will, thine.
Yeah.
And so the author is saying, look, he went through the cross to save me, which is accurate.
I had a little kid's book about Jesus when I was little. And the whole idea, like that was the first time that I had ever heard about Jesus sweating blood, and I just was so fascinated by that.
And so I always wanted people to sweat blood.
No, just, him.
In pity, angels beheld him and came from the world of light to strengthen him in the sorrows he bore for my soul that night.
I don't know.
How accurate is this one?
Probably not.
I don't know.
That's my song.
You definitely
Yeah,
bumped your head over
this
that
is
one.
I believe it's, I thought it was a Catholic doctrine that angels came on the cross and invigorated him in his last breaths, something like that. I might be completely
Where does that say
making
in
that
the
up.
Bible?
Where did they
In
get
there.
that from?
I don't remember it saying it anywhere. I could be wrong, but
I don't remember ever.
I think this was a pretty
Probably like
common
Mormons
thing
or
back in the
something.
20th century, early 20th century, that this was the idea that there were angels attending him on the cross just after his death.
Yeah. The only time I've ever known the angels attending Jesus was when he was in the desert for 40 days.
Right.
As he was.
Yeah, after he resisted the temptations, the
Right.
angels came and tended to him. Yeah.
Right. That's the only time I ever. But I could be wrong. It could be a Catholic doctrine,
What?
and that's one of those
I
minor
don't
ones that I
remember.
just don't remember. Because that was a long time ago.
Anywho,
All the Catholic doctrine.
At one time I did.
he took my sins and my sorrows. He made them his very own. He bore the burden to Calvary and suffered and died alone.
Yeah, crying.
That is.
The first part of the gospel?
How accurate is that one?
I smiled
He
at
took
him.
my sins and my sorrows.
Cried.
Did he take his sins and make them his very own?
No.
Well,
He
he
bore them.
It's okay.
he
So-
bore them on the cross. He.
Okay, but that's the second half of the sentence. The statement is, he took my sins and made them his very own.
Well,
Is that
sins are
true?
still my own, but he took them from me.
It's poorly worded.
That's enough. Don't test me.
Probably not. It's not very accurate. No.
Yeah, I say, get it more biblical, it would be, he took my sins and became them. He became sin who knew no sin, that we might become the his righteousness. That's straight from the text, right? Yeah.
Corinthians 5:21. Thank you, GT.
You want a brownie badge or a bozo badge?
GT, I want.
When with the ransomed in glory his face I at last shall see, 'twill be my joy through the ages to sing of his love for me. What's that mean? When with the ransomed in glory his face I at last shall see.
Well, to ransom someone is to like pay for them.
Right?
So
So this is
With-
like the heavenly scene when he comes back
right.
and pulls us all up to the clouds.
Right?
With the ransom in glory, like the ransom in glory is referring to Jesus.
Referring to all the saints. We're the ransomed.
But we will be in glory, which means
So
we'll be in.
when this guy's with all of us in glory, and we see his face at last, it's going to be so joyful for so many ages to sing of his love. Yeah.
part of the room is distracting.
What?
I'm not being distracted or distracting. You guys are distracting.
Up on the
Want to read along with me?
not taking part in distraction.
This does not bode well. We've got two tough texts today.
Once we start talking about the locust, we'll be reined in for
Yeah.
sure.
I'm not sure.
Charles Hutchinson Gabriel, born on August
Stop the
18th.
cycle.
Y'all shut up and stop it.
I was gonna stop her.
Give me the water bottle.
Okay, be quiet. I'm into it.
Oi.
Charles Hutchinson Gabriel, born on October 18th, 1856, was a writer of gospel songs and a composer of gospel tunes. He is said to have written and or composed between 7,000 and 8,000 songs, many of which are available in 21st century hymnals. He used several pseudonyms, including Charlotte G. Homer, H.A. Henry, and S.B. Jackson, making it often difficult to know the precise number of songs he wrote. Gabriel grew up on an Iowa farm. He learned music by playing the reed organ in his home. Gabriel's musical activities ranged from teaching in the singing schools that were so popular in the 19th and early 20th century to authoring texts, composing songs, anthems, and cantatas, and editing song collections.
Cantatas.
Though self-trained, he started learning leading singing school educational events as a teenager.
I'm sorry,
He worked-
can we explain what cantatas are?
This type of song.
What type of song?
I don't know.
Ask you what a cantata is.
What is a cantata?
Okay.
Go Google it.
That
I'm
was
curious.
juicy.
Ew.
Though self-trained, he started leading singing school educational events as a teenager. He worked with Grace Episcopal Methodist Church in San Francisco from 1890 to 1892, and then moved to Chicago, where he worked for Homer's Roadhavers Publishing Company. Nice. The words and music of I Stand Amazed first appeared in E.O. Excel's collection Praises, 1905. Reverend Carlton R. Young, editor of the United Methodist Hymnal, notes, "This song of gratitude and praise for the atoning death of Jesus is a personal and Adventist interpretation of Luke's account of Jesus' sweating blood in the Garden of Gethsemane, a portion of the Passion narrative not included in the other Gospels." Stanza 2 of I Stand Amazed in particular recreates this scene. "For me it was in the garden he prayed, not my will but thine. He had no tears for his own grief, but sweat drops of blood for mine." The song continues to be reworked for more recent song styles. Contemporary Christian artist Chris Tomlin has a popular version of I Stand Amazed.
Does he?
Gabriel is credited with writing tunes for many other text writers, such as Sylvia Martin's His Eye is on the Sparrow, which I don't know if we've done that hymn yet.
We
But-
do not.
That
We
says
haven't?
Sevilla.
Sevilla, what did I say?
Sylvia.
Oh, thank you.
It's supposed to be similar.
We'll do His Eye on the Sparrow soon then. Gabriel was married twice, first to Fanny Woodhouse, which ended in divorce, and later to Amelia Moore. One child was born to each marriage. He died in Hollywood, California. Before his death, Gabriel wrote an autobiography titled 60 Years of Gospel Song. He was inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 1982.
A cantata is a medium-length narrative piece of music for voices with instrumental accompaniment, typically with solos, chorus, and orchestra.
So,
So I was right, it's a type of song.
where's the
Basically.
gospel music?
No, Steven, I think you're a bit off on that one.
I have. Hey, Steven.
It's Italian.
Where is the Gospel
Yes.
Music Hall of Fame?
I don't know.
Find out.
I don't know.
Google it.
Why do you always say that so salty?
Google it.
It's Italian for sing.
Cantata means cantata in the cantata.
Alright. We're in Revelation chapter 8.
Steven, how do you find
Yeehaw!
So to get to Revelation, you go to the middle of your Bible, and then you count how many pages there are from the beginning to the middle, and then you turn that many pages right, and you'll be in the middle of the book of Revelation then. Or you'll be at the end of the book of Revelation. That's the easiest way.
Are you sure about
Stop
that?
putting on my things.
904.
Well, get your mismatched socks away from me.
No.
But don't you usually wear them?
Are you sure
How
about
did
that?
Mark?
Not that badly unmatched.
So you
Usually-
match
But then you didn't go to the middle.
I asked
They're
him.
white.
Well, if you had followed my instructions exactly, he would have ended up in the Book of Revelation.
Nor do the
So
colors.
middle is Psalms or Proverbs.
It's kind of different per Bible based on how they typeset.
Nice shorts.
500
Being straight up. These are actually underwear and underneath are my shorts.
Nice.
Crazy.
I don't feel like doing that mentally.
Revelation chapter 8.
Why do your underwear have pockets?
But before that, outline. So we are
Is that
here,
weird?
and then we're also doing Daniel
You're
70
so
weeks
off.
today.
Which I found more confusing than.
Now
Daniel's 70 weeks are tough, and
Now
we'll
I'm
be
past
spending
Revelation.
probably the majority of the time today on the 70 weeks prophecy instead of the Trumpet Chapter. This is where we are. Next week we'll go on to the Seven Thunders and the Two Witnesses, which is a fun chapter. Seven Thunders is the biggest question mark for me, or the biggest frustration in interpreting Revelation for me.
I'm still having trouble finding Revelation.
So,
Leave it alone, man. We're done.
Just stop.
remember where we are in the story? Over here, yeah?
Yeah!
So, since we're at the end, what does that mean?
We need to know everything before it!
Right. Okay. Glad that's sticking. Quick refresher on what we did last week. We talked about the seal judgments, right? Started out with the 4 horsemen. Yeah, that's seals 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
White, red, black, and pale.
And then seal 5 was the people under the altar, right, saying, when is our blood going to be avenged, the martyrs? And he said, wait, we got to add more to your number, so just hang tight.
More people must die.
Exactly. And then seal 6 was,
Big ol' hole.
Everyone in caves.
yeah, the sun, moon, stars black out.
Asking the rocks to kill them.
Guy goes down, people asking the rocks to kill them, yeah. hide in the cave.
In that painting, is that one guy eating the other one?
What?
It does kind of look like that.
Underneath the black
Yeah.
horse right there?
Yeah.
Ew. Haha.
Zombies, man.
Oh,
So
I mean, the black horse does bring zombies.
we also looked at the
Or no,
first
it
lunch
was
break.
the
The
green
black
guy.
one.
What happened in the first lunch break?
The 144,000.
144,000.
People
We
were
talked about, why the listing is weird, the list of tribes there. Why it doesn't include Ephraim and doesn't include Dan, but does include Levi and Joseph. And then what happens after the 144,000 in the lunch break? There's 2 big groups. There's the 144,000, which are Jews, marked, sealed through the tribulation. And then there's a
Great multitude.
multitude of nations, right?
That's Ephraim.
And so that's where I think, yeah, it's Ephraim. The church, yeah. So, then we had the 7th seal, which was the angel with the censer, right? Not the censure. Angel with the censer puts the fire on the altar, and then he casts the fire to earth.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember that part.
Oh, yeah.
You
that
were
was
sleeping.
That was chapter
Was it?
8, verses
Yeah.
1 through 5. You were sleeping.
Yeah.
Nice.
And remember the method that I tend to hold to on how the seals, trumpets, and bowls work is the telescoping that says first 7. The 7th seal is the 7 trumpets, and the 7th trumpet is the 7 bowls. Everybody track on that? Remember all that? Yeah. All right. So now we're getting into the 7 trumpets.
Yeehaw.
I do have a
Just
question
to
about
be
the
off.
picture of the bowls.
Yeah, it says plagues. It should say bowls.
No, I know, but the picture. How is that?
It's like a vial
Why did you do Hebrew work this week?
tilted over, and it's
Why didn't you fix this
Pouring out.
during
Oh,
the Hebrew
pouring
class?
He didn't make this, he just found it.
No, I know, but I was.
why didn't he fix it during his Hebrew class like he did with the scroll?
because I skipped my Hebrew class this week.
Oh.
I was running a conference.
Okay.
I told my professor I was skipping, and he was like, "Yeah, that's fine." So, all right. So we're gonna look at the 7 trumpets today. I'll read verses 1 through 5 of chapter 8 first to remind us of the 7th seal. When the Lamb opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer. And he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne, and the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it on the earth, and there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Now 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to blow them. So this is, I think, we're kind of resetting back to the beginning of the 7th seal. Saying, so that's what happens. Now let's zoom in and look at what goes on in between there. And we're going to go through the 7 angels and the 7 trumpets one by one. And make sure that my sound is all working, because I've got such great sound effects.
Do you?
Ooh.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
it's going to be spectacular.
Spectacular.
Indeed.
Color.
I forgot to check this before, my apologies. It would have been so much better if I remember.
We have Denise make our sound effects.
Trumpet.
Yeah.
Yo, it's or Denise, that way she can be ready.
So the first trumpet. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that
Beautiful.
sounds much better than my
Yeah.
honking my
Do they go up? And then the last one is like.
No, I wanted to do a thing where like I had 7 different ones and it was all funny, but I didn't have time.
That's because you skipped Hebrew.
I had a busy week. First trumpet. I basically just have a real quick summary on each, and then we'll look at the 5th and 6th in a little bit more detail. But the first 4 are pretty straightforward. First trumpet, hail and fire mixed with blood. 1/3 of the earth is burned up.
But not
Including
only,
all the green
only
grass.
the green grass, not the brown grass.
Including all the green grass.
Yep.
We're gonna bring this back, Steven.
My Lord!
Only the green grass, not the brown grass. I'm glad that that has survived for 4 years. Very important. To remember that it's only the green grass, not the brown
I
grass.
see the green grass over there in that field.
Hey, we remember what we can handle.
Yeah, I'm saying. Remember the important stuff. Trumpet number 2.
Oh.
Bam, bam.
Fire. Fiery mountain gets thrown into the sea from heavens. 1/3 of the sea turns to blood, and 1/3 of the creatures in the sea die.
So
I think that 1/3 of the sea turning to blood is just a reference to 1/3 of the creatures in the sea dying. When 1/3 of the creatures in the sea die, they bleed, and it turns the sea really bloody.
Well, I guess depending on how they die.
Yeah, it's totally up to you. This is reminiscent of anyone?
It
The
could be.
10 plagues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. The Nile turns to blood, or it gets threatened to.
That's what I was trying to say, but for some reason I didn't think it was plagues.
You could have said bowls and we probably would have gotten it.
3rd angel blows his trumpet. Burning star from heaven falls.
Meteor.
Yeah, I tend to think of it as a meteor, right? A burning star from heaven is what John sees. Is what he describes.
Why is his name Wormwood?
Why is it named Wormwood? Well, keep reading.
1/3 of the
I
water
mean,
bitter.
became Wormwood.
Became
but, like,
Wormwood.
I don't know
Because
what
What is it?
Wormwood
Oh,
is
okay,
fresh
okay.
water.
Wormwood is a bitter root that you would bite on to
Got it.
have bitter taste.
Got it.
So yeah, it's a reference to the bitterness, the
Eating plain
the
bread.
spoiling of the water is how I put it. 1/3 of the fresh water gets spoiled.
Ah.
No, the waters that get spoiled, right? It's not the sea. It's the
The
drinking
fresh.
water, right? The water that you would normally not want to taste bitter. 4th trumpet blows.
Well, before the 4th trumpet. Oh no, never mind.
Yeah, that's next.
Okay.
1/3 of the sun and the moon and the stars. I don't know what it means by 1/3 of the sun and 1/3 of the moon go dark.
It means
It's like
a
just
third
like a
of the
little
sun.
piece.
Does it mean
and
that
a
like
third
a
of the moon.
pie section that's 1/3 of the moon goes? Does it mean that it like decreases in brightness by 1/3 in terms of
It
lumens?
probably means.
Or does it mean that it goes dark for 1/3 of the day longer than it would? I tend to think it's the 3rd option.
Probably
What's the third
means
option?
that it's gonna shrink by 1/3.
I think it means that it goes dark for 1/3 of the day because of
And
what it
it's gonna
says after that, right?
and destroy everything.
Read with verse 12. 4th angel blew his trumpet. 1/3 of the sun was struck, and 1/3 of the moon, and 1/3 of the stars, so that 1/3 of their light might be darkened, and 1/3 of the day might be kept from shining.
Okay.
So I think this is a reference to the length of time that it's lighting the earth is cut by 1/3. So there's darkness longer. Darkness is often associated with evil, death, sin. Right?
So it's like Canada. Was it Canada or no?
Yeah.
Alaska.
Yeah, it happens in Canada too.
Oh yeah.
And Russia.
Whatever.
Everything in the northern hemisphere
Yeah. That.
above a certain
Mongolia.
level. After the fourth trumpet, there's like a brief kind of interlude thing, and an eagle gets seen. Verse 13, I looked and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth at the blasts of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow.
Hey, thanks, Eagle, for feeling sorry for us.
Yeah, so this is actually interesting. This is the third time in the Bible that we have a talking animal. Yeah?
Oh, the donkey was.
Is
The donkey for Balaam, the serpent in the garden, and this.
Could this be one of the things that's holding back the four winds?
Possibly.
The bird that looks like it's in flight?
Yeah, one of the living creatures.
But it doesn't have.
But I feel like he would have written the fourth living creature who had the appearance like an eagle. Lots of speculation about what this eagle is. Some people say it's the U.S.
Yeah, America.
I mean, the eagle is our national bird.
Waste of time,
I
turkey.
don't think so for
John
sure. but-
wrote that into the Bible long before the U.S. was a thing.
I know, but he also wrote about from the north and from the east. Not
Right.
necessarily any animal in particular, but that was before Russia and China.
Yeah, I say
I mean,
it's not completely ridiculous to say
Yeah.
just as the U.S. I think it's unwise, but it doesn't seem like there's enough textual justification.
It's kind of
for
like
it.
putting yourself into the Bible, but
Yeah. And to be honest, this is one I just don't know. I get the feeling that there's something in here that'll tell you what the eagle is, but I haven't found it. So if you find it,
it could
Please
just be
tell
an
me.
eagle.
it could just be an eagle. Who's talking? The reason that it's an animal talking sparks my interest because, like I said, that's only happened twice before in the Bible. So, and both
one
times
good and
was-
one bad.
Yeah,
The donkey and
the serpent. But he's clearly talking about what? Whoa, whoa, whoa.
to the people who are still on the earth after these trumpets blow.
Yeah,
Watch
after
out.
the next three, right? So there's four have just gone and there's three left. So he's kind of giving a preface for the last three trumpets.
These people are already asking for death from the rocks.
So the fifth angel blew his trumpet. I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth. Read along with me. It's chapter 9, verse 1. Saw a star fallen from heaven to earth. And sorry, I have so many scribbles on top of my Bible I can't read it. And
The
he was
shaft of the
given
abyss.
this key to the shaft of the bottomless pit, the abyss. I think.
So could the I was thinking, could the abyss like be a reference to maybe a volcano?
Possibly. I don't think that's what we're talking about, and I'll explain in a minute when we get
Okay.
through it. Verse 2, he opened the shaft of the abyss, the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened in the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions on the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green plant, or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Who has the seal of God on their foreheads?
The tribes.
144,000, right. So that means that the 144,000 had to happen before this happens, right? See how you get a little bit of chronology placed together? They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them, and their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. And in those days people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. Where does... I guess we keep reading that. He describes the appearance of the locust. Starting in verse 7. Notice all of the similes. Appearance of the locusts were like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold. Faces were like human faces. Their hair like women's hair. Their teeth like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like the breastplates of iron, and the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots with horses rushing into battle. They have tails that sting like scorpions, and their power to hurt people for 5 months is all in their tails. They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he is called Apollyon. Apollyon means destroyer. Same with Abaddon. Destruction. So Apollyon, he's the star who falls to earth, given the key to the bottomless pit, the angel of the bottomless pit. Releases all of these things.
Horse, scorpion, man.
Yeah, weird horse, scorpion, man things with tails that sting.
So are they like really like type of
Scorpion
creatures like
man
really big, or
locust.
are they just kind of like normal sized locusts that look like that?
According to this picture, they're larger than horses.
That's an actual photograph of the vision
They're
that John
like-
saw. So.
Absolutely ginormous.
Lots of
Bigger than
speculation about
trucks.
what these things are.
I'm gonna have nightmares now.
I'll say the most common one that you'll hear, particularly in dispensationalist circles, is that these are attack helicopters. This is, all of these similes are, John is seeing a fleet of attack helicopters and he's trying to figure out how to describe them. And so he uses all these similes.
Where's the hair?
Yeah.
And that's where I go, maybe he's seeing an attack helicopter with, you know, how they paint stuff on the side of the attack helicopter, and so he's seeing what's
crown.
painted on it.
Right, but they're normally different depending on who's
That would
flying.
kill them, not like torment them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't have like
Tormenting is
stinging
like
tails.
I think it's
That's-
best to say
that's
these are
demons
demons.
instead.
These are fallen angels. Those who are, on 1 Peter talks about angels that are locked, awaiting the day of torment. I think these are them. And they're released on the earth to torment. That's what they're doing. And they have this appearance that pretty close to what John's describing. You know, that they're literally just going out and wreaking havoc. So that picture that you saw with the guy eating the other guy, yeah, that's, I think, not too far off. It's going to be like demons taking form on earth. We know that angels have the ability to do that. Demons are just angels with fallen moral character. So yeah, I don't see any problem with just saying these are demons, and they look weird because they're demons. They will be tormenting everyone who's on earth except for the 144,000.
What if this is what angels look like, actually?
Right?
Well, I mean, every time an angel is pictured in the Old Testament, they fall down on their face. I imagine it's,
What if
or
they're
they
more
tremble,
Quite
or they,
marvelous.
huh? They fall down on their face, but they tremble, and they. So, to me, they're scary. I mean, that says that they're scary.
They're horse, scorpion, locust.
Quick last one,
Yeah.
6th trumpet. 4 angels are told to, what does it say? Release the 4 angels who are bound to the great river Euphrates, So the 4 angels who've been prepared for the hour, the day, the month, and the year were released to kill 1/3 of mankind. The number of mounted troops was 10,000 times 10,000. I heard their number.
Well, it says 200 million.
200 million, right? That's what, I think that's a better translation, actually. 200 million. 1/3 of men on earth die, and the survivors don't repent. This is how, again, I think we know that this is riding up towards the very end of the tribulation. We're getting to the sixth trumpet, and everyone who's left refuses to believe in the Messiah.
Which is crazy to think about, like, all this is happening, and, like, you're still, like, turn away from it?
Yeah, that's an important point. That's what you should be getting from this, is the hardness of heart of the unbeliever is hard. Again, this is the kind of thing that leads me towards the predestinationist view of individual salvation. That if it really is a matter of convincing people to use their free will to choose God, don't you think this would convince them? Don't you think they would say, oh, you know, this is the torment that's coming on those who don't follow God, and so I'm going to do that? But no. If it's the work of the Holy Spirit who does the first act and does the full act, and God predestines those who will believe, and they believe, it makes a little bit more sense why there would be people who do not believe, because God is the one who takes the action.
Which lends itself, it reminds me of the plagues.
Yeah.
God
Right.
says, I will harden
Pharaoh's
Pharaoh's
heart.
heart.
Yeah.
Is it
So-
yours?
Because those were some
This
pretty
is
bad
yours?
things that happened too.
Yeah. No, just,
The other thing to recognize about all
Is this
these
yours?
is who is the one sending this stuff?
Angels.
Angels. On the authority of?
The Lamb.
Yeah, the Lamb, God. This is the just punishment and wrath that God pours out on mankind.
What sister is not you made?
If you wonder what humans actually deserve, it's this. This is what we actually deserve in our sin, in our rebellion against God. This is what should come of us. It is only by His grace that He saves us from this wrath that we justly deserve. And we tend to not like to think of, there's often this stupid dichotomy that gets drawn of the Old Testament God being wrathful and vengeful and the New Testament God being lovey and touchy-feely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ridiculous.
God is God.
Read the book of Revelation. That's in the New Testament. Read the book of Exodus of God's enduring patience and chance after chance after chance He gives to the people of Israel. That's in the Old Testament. Wrath and mercy are constantly seen in God's character throughout the entire story. Anybody who talks about that whole Old Testament God versus New Testament God thing hasn't read either the Old or the New Testament in any kind of detail. Quick overview. Something to notice also, the pattern of the seals and trumpets, both of them have the 4 in a row that are very similar, and then 3 that are describing like different scenes that are playing out on Earth.
Separated by the eagle.
Except for
The 4 and then 3.
Yeah, in the trumpets it's separated by the eagle.
Yeah.
In the seals it's not, but
Okay.
it's just straight through. But there's still that 4 that match, and then 3 that don't. 4 that match, 3 that don't. This is one of the arguments that people will use to take the concurrent view. You remember the different options, telescoping, and then concurrent, where all of the number 1s line up and all the number 2s line up. They'll say, look, the 4 horsemen look a lot like the 4 trumpets. So it's one of the arguments that they'll use for that.
Why can't they just have more than one God at different times?
They can.
More than one what?
More than one God at different times.
First 4 are pretty straightforward, yeah? Angel blows his trumpet, and he describes the judgment that comes on earth, and I think the judgment is quite literal. It says a third of the earth will be burned up, and I think that a third of the earth gets burned up.
No.
People will try and dance around that and say it doesn't really happen, particularly preterists. We talked a little bit about this at the beginning. Preterists who say that most of the book of Revelation has already happened. I tell them, read through the trumpet judgments and tell me when this happened on earth. Like, seriously? A third of the earth was darkened, a third of the earth is burnt up, a third of the sea was turned to blood, a third of the fresh water on the earth went bitter. An angel was set on earth to release locust demons. And they'll be like, yeah, that'll happen. They just kind of broad brush and be like, whatever. And it's like, no, like, read some of these specifics. I have yet to meet a preterist who will just walk through the book of Revelation with me. And I think it's because they don't have great arguments for when this stuff supposedly took place on Earth already. The ones who do try to take any kind of care with it will spiritualize and analogize and downplay the severity of what's being described. They'll say, yeah, it says a third of the earth burnt up. That's not literally a third of the earth. It's talking about, like, you know, a lot of it burned up, and this is talking about the fall of Rome.
But why would it say a third of the earth if it wasn't a third of the earth?
That's my question. Right? They're like, but you see, you have to understand how to read apocalyptic literature. Like, whenever you're reading apocalyptic literature, you have to read it differently than you would read the rest of the Bible. I'm like,
why?
but why?
I wonder if the
First off,
No.
I wonder if the first trumpet judgment about a third of the earth burned, and then the 4th one, where a third of the moon and the stars and the sun are gone, it's like it's burned itself up in a sense on the first judgment. first trumpet fell.
Interesting
Like it
thought.
just kind of burned itself out.
Yeah. Gibbons, we've already talked about that in some detail. Some people will suggest that the four angels who are preparing for war in Trumpet 6 are the four horsemen. Problem with that, no matter how you arrange the chronology of the seals and the trumpets, they just don't line up. We're talking about trumpet number 6 and seals number 1 through
Weren't
4.
the horsemen already released before?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think these are four different angels.
They were released at one of the seals, right?
Yeah, seals 1 through 4.
Yeah.
They're the things that started off.
And the naming the 144,000, that hadn't happened until after some.
I think that happened at the beginning. So like when you get to that first lunch break, it's John taking a beat and saying, before all of this took place, let me give you some background info on what went down. God sealed 144,000 people before the four angels were let loose to bring forth the earth. Now, some people will look at the 144,000 and say those are the four angels in view here. So the four angels from the first lunch break, they'll say are the four angels from Trumpet 6, which the chronology of that lines up okay. But I think the four angels from the first lunch break are the four horsemen. So that's my issue.
The four angels that the four horsemen could have done their job, and this is like afterwards. They're preparing.
Yeah.
It could be them technically, but it's just not. They're not doing that job that was set before them.
Right.
At the first part, and you'd kind of see them say, the ones with the horses were doing it if they were the ones that were doing it.
Right.
Because you saw them before.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like you'd think that he would describe it the same way if it's the same character. Yeah.
You were gonna say, is this where, whenever you're talking about Trumpet 5, is that those questions? Is that where you're gonna tell us why you don't think it's a volcano?
Oh yeah, thank you. I don't think it's volcano for two reasons. One, there's a word for volcano in Greek, so we very easily could have said volcano. Instead, he chose the words bottomless pit and described it in a weird way. And two, since I think it's just a description of demons, I think that this is some sort of a, for lack of better words, interdimensional portal. This is a place where demons enter the earth, an abyss, a bottomless pit. This is a portal. Yeah, I hate to use the sci-fi terminology, but that's the best I can think of. Yeah, it's a demon portal.
It's a portal. It's a gateway.
It's a demon portal.
That sounds like a rock band name.
Demon portal. Hey guys, this is our band Demon Portal. Hope you like it.
But yeah, they knew what volcanoes were,
Okay.
and he could have just called it a volcano, which is why not a huge deal if you do think it's a volcano. There's bigger fish to fry than arguing about that. But
Yeah, it makes more sense if you take the view of where these demons,
right.
volcano thing.
Volcano demons.
I think
Volcanic demons. They lava people. Anyway,
It's lava.
here's what I do know is happening. So, lots of bad stuff. Yeah, you with me on that? Angels are being released to do their dirty work on the earth and judge the wicked. That's the point of all of these trumpets. And it's letting you know in graphic detail just how bad it's going to get. Just how crazy things are going to get, and people will still hold fast to their rebellion against God. And that's the important thing to hammer home about the first 6 trumpets. The rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of the works of their hands so as not to worship demons and the idols, which means they were worshiping demons and idols. And these demon and idols which cannot see nor walk, and they did not repent of their murders, nor their sorceries, nor their immorality, nor of their thefts.
Is it bad if I kind of want to be able to cast magic spells?
Yes.
Dang. Guess it sucks to suck.
Question here too, so something to think about. Who all is left on the earth at this point?
A third of the
People
population.
that weren't killed.
People who weren't killed.
2/3 of the population.
Not.
All right.
people-
How much of
third
it
was
died?
killed.
How much of it died during the seals?
But that's not including the people who were brought up before the
Well,
tribulation.
we don't exactly
Yeah.
know. We just know that it was like famine. Well, I guess it says like 220 million were killed. And
Where
that
does it say
was-
220 million were killed?
I thought it said that.
No, it said 220 or 200 million horsemen with the 4 angels.
Oh.
And a sixth seal or a sixth trumpet.
We don't know.
Look at chapter 6, verse 8. I looked and behold a pale horse, its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him, and they were given authority over a fourth of the earth, to kill with the sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, and by wild beasts of the earth. So how much of the earth died in
A
seal
quarter,
number
and then a
four?
third.
And then a third of what was left, which means, so if you have a circle, right?
Not
4
including
quarters.
those who died from famine, disease, and
Let's go with me. You got. This is all the people on the earth. You got 4 quarters, right?
So now at
So
this
s-
point, are you taking out
Because
the
the earth is a
Christians who have
circle.
been wrapped?
That's the question. So keep that in the back of your mind. I want you to follow me with this first. You lose a quarter.
Circle.
You've got 3 quarters left, right?
and then you lose a third.
And then you
of
lose a third of that, which means
It's actually a drain.
how much of the earth has died after
A little more than half.
half? If you've got a quarter, 4 quarters, and
Yeah.
you lose 1, then there's 3 quarters left, right?
One.
1,
Yeah.
2,
one
3.
third of one.
So 1/3
All right.
would
yeah.
be half.
of three.
Exactly half.
One third of 3 quarters.
So half of the Earth's population has died by the time a third of the Earth has died. But the question is, who is on Earth? What people groups are on Earth? We know that for sure there's Jews, because 144,000 of them have been marked. And we assume that there are some beyond that who were not marked. Right? We know that there are probably, at least, Gentiles who do not believe.
Gentiles who do believe during the rapture.
This is the question. Are there Gentiles who believe? Are there Gentiles who are marked and saved and come to faith during the tribulation? What do you think?
Supposedly, yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Because the saints' blood hasn't been avenged yet. Or we haven't heard that it has.
Right.
So we assume that the numbers are going to be added to.
Good. So yeah. So this is how you got. There's going to be added martyrs during the tribulation, and we know that the Jews who will be saved will not die. They're sealed that they may persevere to the end of the tribulation. Which means the martyrs who are dying are Gentiles who come to faith. See how we got there logically? So yes, there are Gentiles who are coming to faith, and they all die in the tribulation. Because, how do we know that they all die? Because at the end of this, the 144,000 are the only ones who have been spared, and everyone who is left on earth, after all this killing, does not repent. With me? So you got the 144,000 who've already repented, believed, and they're going to be saved through the tribulation. And Gentiles who are coming to faith, but they're dying, which means everyone who's left within this half of the earth's population is either the 144,000 or unbelieving people who will not repent. Jews or Gentiles. See how we fit all that together? We follow the...
Will there be people still being born now too?
Good question.
It
I
doesn't speak of
think
that.
so.
Yeah.
I think that there will not be anyone, any of the elect who are born during that time.
Or for perdition.
I'd suck to be
But-
wondering that.
The 144,000 might be infants. Just says 12,000 from each tribe, so
Yeah.
don't know how old they
There's a
are.
bunch of babies marching in. I don't know.
So whoever's left on earth are unrepentant, rebellious Jews and Gentiles, probably.
You see, it makes me think, what's their purpose if just to
Die.
die? Like, what's the point? I know I don't. It doesn't really matter what I think.
I mean, they had.
What's
to
the
be
point of
promoted
you
somehow
reading this?
so that it not sneak up on us like the
Yeah.
other night?
Yeah, believe. You see what's coming. Believe. I think that they exist as a testimony. Preemptively, right? They're going to exist so that this could be written, that they would exist, that others might believe because of what will happen to them.
So that they might become more martyrs.
On that cheery note, let's turn to Daniel. Was there any other questions on the trumpets?
And Daniel back at it again with the great prophecy.
Let's go to Daniel chapter 9. So
Wait a
we're
minute, John 20:31.
John 20:31. These things are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and by believing have life in His name.
Yeah, I don't know that part, but.
Yep. That's why he wrote the book of John.
Daniel what?
Would you
Daniel chapter 9.
9.
So where in the story is Daniel?
Right there.
Before they come back from exile.
Right there. You see his name in really tiny print?
Not at all.
I think we're still
After he
reading,
realizes
so-
it's been 500 years with the
7
Jeremiah
years.
thing.
But yes.
What's it?
Yeah, 70.
7 years?
70.
7 years?
So yeah, this is Daniel during exile, right? That's when Daniel lived and was ministering. So he's living in Babylon while the nation is, in captivity, waiting to return. And this is, so a couple of prefaces on this text. The 70 weeks prophecy is one of those prophecies that you will not understand the first time you have it explained to you. And that's just kind of the reality of it. So if this is your first time, expect to be confused. Don't give up.
Even if it might be your second time.
Even if it might be your second time.
Earlier.
Don't give up. It's a confusing thing. I'm going to try and walk you through it as clearly as possible. It takes a little bit of thought. Part of the problem is that every important part of this thing has tough ways that you could translate it different ways, which would totally change the meaning. So even if you're reading it in the original language, it's a little bit confusing to try and piece together. But I want commitment, focus, attempt to understand. Yes? See eyes?
9.
Yes? Yeah?
I will try my best.
Just agreed.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Alright.
I'll apologize now if I have to blow my nose.
That's
You
okay.
can just leave.
We're right here at this time. What's going on with the nation of Judah? What's happened to them right
They've
here?
been scattered?
Yeah, well, that's Israel up in the
Right.
north.
They've been taken into exile.
Right, they've been taken into exile. Babylon came in, they grabbed them all, burned the temple, took them off into exile. And so they've been living in exile for quite a while, about 70 years, when Daniel chapter 9 rolls around.
Before Nehemiah.
Before Nehemiah, right. Ezra and Nehemiah come along afterward and rebuild the temple. This is going to be important for the interpretation of this prophecy. So we're living right there. Nehemiah's right there. With me. Daniel chapter 9. To begin with, we need to know the context of the chapter. What's the scene in which prophecy is given? And it's all of chapter 9 is the scene. Verses 1 through 19 is Daniel praying. And it is a spectacular prayer. Daniel is reading, and actually we can start at the beginning of chapter 9, verse 1. I love this. First year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, by descendant Amid, who was made king over the realm of Chaldeans. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, perceived in the books the number of years that, according to the word of the Lord to Jeremiah the prophet, must pass before the end of the desolation of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. What's he talking about?
We're going to be here for 70 years?
Yeah. Jeremiah 29:10. The verse that everyone skips over when they're quoting, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Daniel's reading Jeremiah chapter 29. And it says in Jeremiah 29, verse 10, 70 years are prepared for you in Babylon. But I will bring you back after that time. For you, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. And I will bring you back to this land. So Jeremiah, as they're going into exile, told the people, you got 70 years, then we'll be back in that land. Okay? So Daniel's reading that, and he's realizing 7 years is about up. So he starts praying. He prays to the Lord. Verse 3, I turned my face to the Lord God, seeking him by prayer and pleas for mercy, with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And I prayed to the Lord my God and made confession, saying, O Lord, great and awesome God, who keeps covenants and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments, we have sinned and done wrong. And he gives this incredible lament and confession and prayer for mercy, and keeps repeating over and over again, not because of us, but because of your name, because of your greatness. Have mercy on us, Lord, for the sake of your name, for the sake of your name, the people who bear your name, Yahweh. Finishes it up with, O Lord, hear, O Lord, forgive, O Lord, listen and take action for your own sake, O my God. Do not delay, because your city and your people are called by your name. So don't let this 70 years pass by and not fulfill your word to us, because we're your people. Right? It's an indictment on you if you don't do what you've promised. That's what he's saying. And far be it from you to have an indictment brought against you. God, you are perfect. So I know that we've sinned. I know that we've rebelled. We've been horrific. Yet, forgive us. And then Gabriel appears. Verse 20. While I was speaking and praying, confessing my sin and the sins of my people Israel. Real quick note there. Throughout this whole thing, he's been confessing sins as if they're his own. Throughout the whole book of Daniel, you never once see the guy sin. Daniel is spotless throughout the whole book of Daniel. All that happens to him is he does the right thing over and over and over again.
Is that because he's the author?
Possibly, but I mean, all the other books, the authors record their own sins. I think Daniel's just really one of the best characters in the Bible. He shows up and he has faith. And it's for that reason that Gabriel shows up. You'll see that. So he's confessing sins as if they're his own, and they're really not. The sins that he's confessing are the sins of Israel, which he takes ownership of because he's part of that group, the corporate identity of Israel, which he's a part of. But I'm digressing. Verse 20, while I was speaking and praying, confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my plea before the Lord God for the holy hill of my God, while I was speaking in prayer, the man, Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at first, came to me in swift flight at the time of the evening sacrifice. He made me understand, speaking with me and saying, O Daniel, I have now come out to give you insight and understanding. At the beginning of your pleas for mercy, a word went out, and I have come to tell it to you, for you are greatly loved. Therefore, consider the word and understand the vision. So, everybody understand the context. Daniel's expecting to go back into Israel because of what Jeremiah wrote. He prays for forgiveness, and an angel, Gabriel, shows up and gives him the following prophecy. What is the prophecy? Read with me. Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. 70 weeks are decreed about your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin, and to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal both vision and prophecy, and to anoint a most holy place. Or anoint the most holy. That's my translation. And I'm going to actually switch over to NASB, and I would encourage you, if you have an electronic Bible where you can pull up NASB, that's what I'm going to try and stick with from here on out. This prophecy in particular, it's just tough to have varying translations and still understand it. So, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to do what? So first of all, who is this prophecy for?
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem and
Your people and your holy city.
your people and your holy city. So the people living in Jerusalem, right? Small quibble, but you get it. People of Israel. Okay. 70 weeks have been declared for people of Israel and the city of Jerusalem. To do what? There's 6 things that at the end of this prophecy will come about. What 6 things are they?
Finish the transgression.
Finish the transgression.
End of sin.
Make an end to sin.
Atonement for iniquity.
Atonement for iniquity.
Everlasting righteousness.
Bring in everlasting righteousness.
Seal up vision and prophecy.
Seal up vision and prophecy.
Anoint the holy place.
Anoint the most holy place. 6 things. What kind of things are... A bunch of those relate to the forgiveness of sins, right? So, first coming of Christ kind of stuff. Because we read the end of this book, right? We know how atonement is made for sins to make an end of iniquity. How's he going to do it? Well, it begins with the cross, and it ends with the resurrection. Yeah? Our resurrection.
What is it, to finish the transgression? I don't understand what that would mean.
Good question. To finish the transgression. I think it's the sin, or the transgression of Adam and Eve. Right? The wanting to be like God, wanting to have the knowledge of good and evil, pride. The sin. I think this is the sin that Paul's talking about in Romans 8. The sin. The sin of wanting to be like God, wanting to earn our own salvation, wanting to not have to rely on God for the world that he created. But these are the things that it's going to do. Basically, what he's saying is 70 weeks until the end of everything you know, until the resurrection in the new heavens and new earth. That's what's going to happen at the end of these 70 weeks, Daniel. With me? So, verse 25, you are to know and discern that, what? From the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah, the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. All right, that's the first part. What's going to happen?
So between the decree to rebuild Jerusalem and Jesus, there's going to be a period of time where something's going to happen.
Yeah, there's going to be, how long a period of time?
7 weeks and 62 weeks.
7 weeks and 62 weeks. And in that time, the plaza in Jerusalem and the moat will be rebuilt, even in times of distress. So they're going to be rebuilt during some, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Agitation.
Distress, agitation, yeah. There's a specific word and I can't think of it. Oh, well. How many weeks is that total? 7 weeks and 62 weeks?
69.
69 weeks. Now, here's the first part of this whole thing that makes it a little bit confusing. The word weeks. How long is a week?
70 sets of 7.
How long is a week?
7 days.
7 days. Okay. The actual word, where it says weeks in all of our translations, is 77s. Okay. Weeks, you could just as easily translate sevens. Okay. So this is not talking about 7-day-long weeks. It's talking about 70 sets of sevens, and I am 100% convinced we're talking about years. 70 sets of 7 years. So 69 weeks, or 69 sets of 7 years, is how many years total? 69 times 7.
That number.
You mean 62? 483.
483, because you got 7 times 7, so 49, plus 62 times 7, 434. Why the division between 7 weeks and 62 weeks? I don't know anything other to say. It's a fancy way of putting it because of the holiness of the number 7. 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. So he's letting you know the perfect round number of 7 times 7, 49. That's a pretty common biblical format, right? 7 times 7. And then letting you know what's beyond that. 62 weeks beyond that. So 69 total weeks. All right, so 483 years between the issuing of a decree to rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah Prince comes. With me? Okay.
Now, is that accurate?
We're about to find out. So, what decree is he talking about? If you know the story well, there's a few different candidates.
From the...
Bless you.
First option would be Ezra 1, King Cyrus, right? Issues a decree that says, Israel, you can go back to Jerusalem.
But that's not to rebuild.
Correct. That one doesn't say anything about rebuilding. It just says, people, you can go back to your land. So I don't think that's the right one. There's another decree, as they're rebuilding the temple only in Ezra, when, I think it's Xerxes, says you could have all these reinforcements in order to rebuild your temple. But again, it doesn't have anything to do with the city of Jerusalem or a moat. And it doesn't talk about the times of distress. There's another really, really brief one that's reinforcing that decree, that same one. And then you get to Nehemiah 2. Story of Nehemiah, how's that go? You've been through Nehemiah.
Was he cupbearer?
He's cupbearer. And Nehemiah starts out with Nehemiah the cupbearer lamenting over what's going on in Israel. What's happening in Israel that he's lamenting?
They were building the temple and then stopped.
They were building the temple.
And then used the materials for their own houses.
Yeah, they were building their own houses instead of the temple.
You're thinking of something earlier in Ezra. He's just getting upset that there's been fires. The walls has been burnt down. Nothing has been rebuilt but the temple. That's what Nehemiah is lamenting. And that since the temple got rebuilt, there hasn't been any rebuilding or recultivation of the city. There's just a temple sitting there and people struggling to survive around in tents. And specifically burning. There's talks repeatedly about how everything is burnt down. So he wants to go back and rebuild specifically the wall. So that they could, start to have a society again in Israel of Israelites.
The shovel in one hand and the sword in the other.
Yes. He wants to go back. His face is troubled, and Artaxerxes says, Nehemiah, why is your face troubled? And he goes, I'm sad about my city, Jerusalem. It's all burnt down. He says, oh, okay. Go back and rebuild it. Take whatever you need. That's the decree, I think. When he says, you have my blessing. Here's a letter to tell the leaders of the province that Israel's in to let you rebuild the wall.
To give you the materials too, right?
All the
wood, all the everything.
So Nehemiah chapter 2 verses 3 through 8, I think, is the decree that is the going out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. Because that's what the decree is saying. Go ahead, Nehemiah, rebuild the wall and get that city functioning. It accounts for it will be built in the plaza even in times of distress. You go read Nehemiah 2 through 6, and over and over and over again, the people of the land do not like that they are rebuilding the temple or rebuilding the wall and the city, and they keep trying to work against him, giving him opposition. That's the word I was trying to think of earlier. Opposition.
There you go.
So much so that, as you referenced, there's parts of Nehemiah where it talks about how they're rebuilding. They have a shovel in one hand and a spear or a sword in the other, because they're having to fight with one hand while they're building with the other. Right? Time of distress, you could say. Be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. With me? So
I'm assuming the moat is part of the wall?
yes. Yeah. So I think that we're on very safe ground to say that's the decree we're talking about. The decree in Nehemiah 2. We know exactly what day that decree was, because it tells us in the text. I think it says the 10th of Nisan.
Do we also have historical record of that?
Yep. I don't know.
The historical record is Nehemiah 2.
Yeah, I don't know if we have any extra biblical, but we have Nehemiah 2, which really clearly says. And we have a whole bunch of historical record agreeing with the circumstantial. The king that's in power at time, the nation of Israel rebuilding around that time. All that stuff's there. But I think Nehemiah is the only place where you have the date.
It says in the month of Nisan,
Month of Nisan.
King Artaxerxes.
That's right. It doesn't tell you the date. Take my word for it for now. March 5th, 444 BC. That was the date that this decree happened. 483 years. How did they measure years? Well, in prophetic literature, you always measure years in 360-day lunar years. Now we know the problem with that. Today, using the Julian calendar, how long is a year?
365.
365
And
and
1/4.
Point something.
a quarter days. Yeah,
1/4.
about a quarter.
0.25.
It's 365 days, 8 hours, 42 minutes, and 56 seconds, something like that.
How many milliseconds?
I don't know. I don't even know if I got the other numbers right. I think the 8 hours is correct. I don't know about anything else.
You're going too far, Boyle.
So, if we're going with the prophetic, the normal 360-day years, from the going out of this decree to the Messiah, should be 173,880 days.
Ooh.
Follow me on that math, yeah?
That's what it
Yeah,
should
I'm sure you just did the math in your head.
be. Yeah.
I think
I
that
actually did that on my fingers, not even in my head.
I am convinced by the stuff that I've read that the triumphal entry took place on March 30th, 33 AD, which is exactly 173,880 days after March 5th, 444 BC.
Insane.
Yeah. And if you want more specifics on all of this, I would encourage you to read Harold Honer's dissertation, The Chronological Aspects of the Life of Christ. There's 2 chapters in here that deal with this prophecy. And verifying these dates from the records in here and lining them up with historical records outside the Bible.
Right, so this is the period of time that says between this and this something's going to happen.
Chronological
We haven't
life
gotten
of
to what's going to
Jesus.
happen.
This is what, well, it just says between this and this is the coming of the Messiah, or the Messiah is all it says,
Okay.
right? So between the going out of the word to rebuild the temple and the Messiah, 173,880 days. I'll skip over the math for now, and we can come back to it. But that's the math that shows you how you get to exactly the number of days and how it lines up perfectly. I'll come back to that if we have time. Was it so? Between the going out of the decree and the Messiah, that many days. Where am I? NASB. Part 2. So that's the first part of the prophecy. So you know exactly when you're going to see the Messiah. This many days. Part 2.
So the
Most
Jews
likely
really,
in Jerusalem.
so the
most
Jews
likely in
really had
Jerusalem.
no excuse.
Yeah, well, actually, it makes total sense. If we're talking about the triumphal entry, they're shouting, Jesus, Son of David. They know this is about when the Messiah is supposed to be showing up, right? And as Jesus comes along, he fits the bill. They just don't understand his role in his first coming.
Those silly priests.
Yeah, so they're laying down the palm branches. They're saying, Son of David. They understand he's the Messiah. He's the one prophesied in Daniel chapter 9.
Wonder if anyone
69 weeks. That's now.
The priests who were supposed to know that.
Yeah.
actually been measured.
Verse 26, it goes on. So that's part 1. This is when he's going to show up. Part 2, verse 26. Then, after the 62 weeks...
Of the triumphal entry?
Sorry?
After the 62 weeks of the triumphal entry, which was...
Well, the triumphal entry is, I say, is the end point of the 69 week, the 7 plus 62 weeks segment. So that's what kind of, but if you want to think of it like a stopwatch starts when the decree goes out.
Yeah.
We count 69 weeks, and a stopwatch pauses when the triumphal entry
That
happens.
was weird. That thing just actually moved.
Oh, yeah,
I've
because
it's been
never
moving the whole
It's been doing that.
seen
Wait,
it
what's
move.
been
Well,
Never.
actually, I just
The
put
clock.
batteries in it.
Okay, I've
It's
never
supposed
seen
to
it
move, but it's broken.
That freaked me.
But the stopwatch pauses at the triumphal entry, or we don't know that it pauses though, but we're expecting it to just continue ticking. But then something happens
Yeah, I did that.
after the 62 weeks. So it doesn't specify how long after the 62 weeks, just as after.
So the triumphal entry, then 62 weeks happens, and then something else happens.
No. It's 7 weeks and 62 weeks happens, and triumphal entry ends that.
Yeah.
Ends that. And then after that 69-week period, we don't know how long. We assume right after. The anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing. What does that describe?
Crucifixion.
Crucifixion, right? The Messiah has shown up. What happens right after that? He gets cut off.
So
and he'll
couldn't
have
we
nothing.
say, what, 62 weeks before the crucifixion of Jesus, what was that? And then determine how much time was between the end of the prophecy in Daniel and
I'm lost with you.
So
The 62 weeks is, if you want to think of it, is actually 69 weeks.
right. So you have two periods of time. The first part in Daniel, the 69 weeks.
The 7 and 62 weeks.
Yeah, and then you have the second part before he's cut off.
Oh no. Okay, I see where we're
62
going.
weeks.
The verse 26 after the 62 weeks is a reference to the 62 weeks we've already talked about.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was thinking there's two different.
No, yeah, it's
segments.
one set of 62 weeks, and so here's describing. So you get 7, 62. Here's this 62. Now after that 62, the Messiah's going to be cut off
Okay.
right away.
Yeah.
So if they mean 69 weeks, why don't they say 69?
That's what I mentioned earlier. The more just the poetic form of delivering it first in the 7 and 7. 7 times 7 is 49. That's a very common round number, and the 7 is the holy number of God, right? So the idea is just giving it to you in that holy number first, and then adding however many are left over for the fulfillment of the prophecy. That's the best I got for you. Any other reckoning, you can try and find things, they just don't fit with the dates at all, no matter how you're trying to parse this thing out. There's just nothing that happens 49 weeks after any of these decrees that makes sense.
Why it would be split up.
Yeah. So, after the 62 weeks, Messiah will be cut off and he'll have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and his or its end will come with a flood, and to the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed. Alright. Question. Who is the prince who is to come?
Squirrel.
Option 1, squirrel. We're just talking about the Messiah, the prince. So that's option number 1. Other thoughts?
The Antichrist.
Antichrist.
Yeah, because he says the prince who is to come.
Prince who is to come. So
Not
here's the thing.
say prince.
I agree. My problem is, contextually, there's not a whole lot of justification for that other than history. Right? If we're just reading this, we're reading right through. After 62 weeks, the anointed one shall be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come. Well, the prince who is to come in this context was the Messiah, right? 62 weeks, or from the going out of the decree to rebuild the temple until the Messiah prince comes. 62 weeks, or 69 weeks.
Yeah, but then why does it say the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing? And then...
Well, we would all agree that the prince is going to come again, right? So so option 1, we're talking about Jesus, and we're talking about his people are going to do what? Destroy the city and its sanctuary. Now, there's some historical justification for taking that interpretation. What happened in, is it 60, 80?
80, 70.
70 is the sacking of Jerusalem. I'm thinking of I think it might be 68. Nero.
Oh yeah, when the city was burning.
Yeah, the city's burning and he blamed the Christians, right? So if that is historically accurate and it was the Christians who burned down the city, that fits perfectly with history. The people of the prince who is to come, as in the Christians, who are the people of this prince who was just cut off, burned down the city. That's one possible
What
interpretation.
city? We'll destroy the city and the sanctuary. What city are we talking about?
Rome, in that interpretation.
Right. I was like, because that doesn't make sense. Because
Right.
I thought city and sanctuary would be Jerusalem.
Good, yes. So, interpretation 2, people of the prince who is to come. Who is the prince who is to come? The Antichrist. And his people destroy the city.
Christians.
Not the Christians, instead, the Romans. AD 70. They came in, destroyed the temple, not a stone was left one on top of the other, like Jesus prophesied, right? Destroyed the temple, burned it, and its sanctuary, and ransacked it. So, the people of the prince who is to come would be the Romans. The prince who is to come would be the Antichrist, not yet on earth. But his people are already working. Right? Anybody who's against God are part of his people. Those are your two options. I tend to lean towards the second one. We're talking about the Antichrist and his people, the Romans, who killed Jerusalem. For the reason you just said, that the city and the sanctuary seems to be a reference to Jerusalem. And for what comes just after that, his end shall come with a flood, to the end there shall be war. So now we're talking about him, who's his end. I think we're talking about the prince who is to come, i.e. the Antichrist.
Your mind says it's.
Yeah. Its end. I prefer his, but its end works just fine. If we're not talking about the Antichrist, then we're talking about the city.
I mean, what is it in Hebrew?
Either or.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah, it's undefined. Desolations are decreed. Verse 27. And he shall make a firm covenant with the many for 1/7. So here we get the last of the 70, the 70th week. Who's he? He shall make a strong covenant with the many. Who's the
Based
nearest?
on what's to come in the chapter, we think the Antichrist.
We think the Antichrist. In the context, who's the nearest antecedent for he?
The one whose people destroyed the...
Yeah.
The one that was
sanctuary.
destroyed by the flood?
Right, yeah, the prince who is to come. Whoever that guy is. Again, more reason why I think it's the Antichrist is what's coming up right here. So, he, as in the prince who is to come, the guy whose people destroyed the city and the sanctuary.
You're saying how in Hebrew it's either or for the destroyed by the flood.
Correct.
Is
Verse 27, it's not. It's definitely he. We're talking about a guy in verse 27.
so could it, okay, yeah.
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 He shall make a strong covenant or a firm agreement or a treaty with the many for 1/7. And for half of the week he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering. Now, I don't like how ESV renders that for half of the week. NASB, I think, does a much better job there. In the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering.
3.5 years.
3.5 years. Half of 7 years is
Time,
3.5 years.
yeah.
Time, times, and half a time. This is a reference to Daniel chapter 7, previous 2 chapters earlier. And it lines up with stuff that's coming in Revelation chapter 12 and 13, which we'll get there.
So
So-
why are we doing this bit now? Is there...
To give you, one, because it fit as far as like when I had time to actually teach it, and to kind of lay the groundwork so that when we revisit it in chapter 13, it won't be completely fresh.
So we can have flashbacks.
Yeah. And to show you why I believe in a 7-year tribulation. To help you work with a chronology of all of these seals, trumpets, bowls, when is all this stuff happening? Why do I believe in a 7-year tribulation? Because of this verse. He shall make a strong covenant with the many for 1 week. 7 years.
1/7.
Bless you.
7 years, and in the middle of the 7 years, he'll put an end to offerings and sacrifice. And then on the wing of an abomination shall come one who makes desolate until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator.
The beast.
Yeah. I think we're talking about his prophet there, but potato. They're all working for the same guy. So what's the last? What happens in the last week? What starts it off?
He makes a covenant.
He makes a covenant, and halfway through that covenant, what's he do?
Puts it into
Puts
the
it out.
sacrificial system.
Puts an end to the sacrificial system. What is the one who makes desolate? I think we're talking about the false prophet of the beast, chapter 13 of Revelation. We'll get there. Don't worry about that right now. What is this covenant? Two often proposed solutions. One is a peace treaty. So whoever this guy is, he's clearly a world leader from Daniel chapter 7, the little
From
horn.
Iran.
From Iran. Some guy who's kind of a world leader makes this interpretation says he'll make a peace treaty with Israel. He'll bring peace to Israel for 7 years, and he'll reestablish the sacrificial system at the beginning of that 7 years, and then halfway through he'll cut it off. This is how dispensationalists will often explain how the sacrificial system will be cut off in the middle of a future 7 weeks, since the sacrificial system isn't currently in effect. Right now, if you go to Israel, they don't have a temple. They're not killing animals. They're not doing sacrifices. So, how can the Antichrist put a stop to it?
And
Well,
12 other kings haven't shown up either.
At the beginning of 7 weeks, he starts it up. That's part of his peace treaty. That's how they'll explain it.
He's the little one who speaks loudly.
Correct. Quit confusing them. Go read Daniel chapter 7, and you'll get what everything that Nathan's referencing right now.
This is a part of it. Why is this not? Why aren't you going to Daniel chapter
Because we only
7?
have so much time.
So?
So I'm answering the questions. How long is the covenant to last? Is that what you're answering?
Yes. How long is the covenant supposed to last?
7 years, but it gets cut short.
7 years, because verse 27, he shall make a strong covenant with the many for
1 week.
1 week. 1/7.
Okay, I see it.
Right.
The
So-
beginning of 27.
70 weeks are decreed. We've already done 69, and here's the 70th.
Right.
In between that,
Does the
there's a gap of time.
Does the 70 have any relation to do with the 70 in exile?
Yes. 77s are decreed for you. So this, remind me again to come back to that. Ask that question again once we finish. Every fairly clear on what this is saying?
I fell asleep, so I'm completely lost. But that's okay. I'm
I got
sorry.
lost either.
Hey,
Okay.
I didn't.
You can go
fall
back and
asleep.
watch again.
We
Okay.
traded places.
So this is why I believe in a 7-year tribulation. This is why I think that the Antichrist will be revealed at the beginning of the tribulation, and I think in the middle he's going to put an end to sacrificial system. It's all because of verse 27 of Daniel chapter 9.
So first, the
The
temple
most
has to be
confusing
rebuilt.
part in this for me,
12
was-
kings gotta show up.
how he was talking about the length of time.
Has to come back.
Right, 77s,
I think
70
that's what
weeks.
gotta
threw
get
me
it
off the
right.
most.
Yeah, once you understand a week is 7 years, it clears up pretty quick.
It's the reincarnation of Rasputin.
No.
Give you this visually. This is a little thing that I put together. So here's the first 69 weeks. So the going out of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah Prince. 7 weeks and 62 weeks. 69 weeks total. There's your math. March 5th, 444 BC. March 30th, 3380. After the 62 weeks, so a little bit of time, the Messiah will be cut off. We know that is 5 days. So 5 days after the 62 weeks end, the Messiah gets cut off.
So it
Because
stops,
Triumphal entry happens on Monday.
and then
and-
after.
He dies on Friday.
So 5 literal days, not 5. No, because it's weeks. Never mind.
Yeah, five literal days. Yes. That's the crucifixion, and I say basically there's a pause there, and the stopwatch gets started again when he makes a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. That's the 70th week. That's what'll restart the clock on these 70 weeks. And in between, there's an undefined amount of time in which the church exists.
Which is where we are
Wasn't there
right now.
some
Which is where we are right now.
who starts with like a P that people say was the Antichrist?
I'm not sure. I'm about to explain a couple. So when we finish going through this, and then he'll make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. Halfway through, he'll put an end to the sacrificial system. 3.5 years, 3.5 years. Make sense? Yes? Does that track?
Yes.
Week 70, weeks 1 through 69. Until the completion of the destruction, when it is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate. That's the end of the 70th
Which is
week.
the seventh seal.
Yeah, it's the seventh bowl, seventh seal, seventh trumpet. It's Christ coming back and throwing the beast of the false prophet into the lake of fire. That's what I think is the decree to be poured out on the one who makes desolate, when he casts the false prophet into the lake of fire.
Crazy timeline.
Yeah. Here's a big question mark, a big hole. One thing you have to explain. Why this pause? So if you hold to this scheme and you say that the 70th week is still future, you got to say that there's a pause in time. First of all, the text suggests a pause, right? The text does split up into 7 and 62 and 70th, and it describes stuff that goes on in between those two segments of time. So clearly, it doesn't go straight from week 69 to week 70, because it describes all this stuff that happens. The city gets destroyed in between the two. So there has to be some kind of a pause, no matter how you interpret this. If you're a preterist and you say all this stuff already happened, they say this whole week is Nero, and they'll do a little bit of fancy math, and they'll say Nero was the one who put it into the sacrificial system. They might also say Domitian. They might also say one of the other that you might be thinking of. I don't think there's any whose name starts with a P, though. They'll pick a Roman official, Titus. That's the other one that they'll say. They'll say he's the one who put it into the sacrificial system. He's the one who made the covenant, and so that 70th week has already happened. And this is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. All of this happens in week 70.
So then I'm saying Titus is the Antichrist?
Yes.
That's okay.
They'll say there is no future single Antichrist. This is how preterists, their whole system is different. Problem with that, they still have to say that there's a break in time for their timeline to work out. There's still 30 some odd years between when the Messiah gets cut off and when Titus comes in and destroys Jerusalem. So, they still have to deal with this pause as well. We just say that the pause is a lot longer and week 70 hadn't happened yet. I think it makes a lot more sense. Personally. I think it lines up with the rest of the Bible well. It fits in the story. So that's the Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy.
Okay, so how does it... You told me to come back to my question.
Yeah. Repeat it.
How does the 70 weeks relate to the 70 years that they were in exile?
Right, so 70 years are in exile. Why are they in exile for 70 years?
Because God said they would be.
Because God said they would be. He actually gives the reason why 70 years. In Jeremiah 29. He says, 70 years are decreed for you because you did not obey my Sabbath year. Because you did not celebrate the year of Jubilee, etc., etc. So, every 7 years, Israel was supposed to take a year off from their work. Let the land rest. Let it breathe. Every 7 years, they were supposed to be saving up through the 6 years, so that the 7th year, they could do no work and still survive. That's what they were supposed to be doing. They didn't do that. And they didn't do it for 70 years. 70 Sabbaths 70 Sabbath years that they skipped over, that the land did not rest. And so, as they're going into exile, God says, because you did not obey my Sabbath for these 490 years. They missed 70 Sabbaths. So 490 years, right? Every 7th year they were supposed to rest and they didn't. That's how long the nation existed when they weren't doing that. So that's when they're going into exile, Jeremiah says, because you did not obey my Sabbath year's rest, 70 years shall you be in exile. So that's why they go in for 70 years. And then Gabriel shows up and he says 70 times 7 years. Because they still didn't repent of their teachings. They still didn't do what they were supposed to do. So it's this fun little 70 times 7
So it's just
thing.
building off of the previous exile.
Right. The 70 years came from them refusing to do Sabbath. And Gabriel's basically showing up and saying, yeah, your sentence has been multiplied by 7 because you still have not repented of your wickedness. But to you, Daniel, because you are holy and beloved, I'm going to tell you exactly when the Messiah is going to show up to the day. And Israel should have been ready. Should have been expecting it. Seems like they were. And then he didn't do what they wanted him to do, and so they killed him. Pause! The kingdom of heaven shall not come on earth anymore. To you it has been given to know the mystery of the kingdom of heaven. But to them it has not been given to know. They have the church, the mystery of the church, grafting in of the Gentiles until the return of Christ. That's it. So like I said, if this is the first time you're going through the Daniel 70 weeks, or even the second time, or even the third time, it took me about 6 times through this hearing it before I started to understand it, and it took me about 4 times through teaching it before I could teach it clearly. So don't worry if you're confused by this prophecy. It's a toughie. But really try and just focus in on the pieces and line them up as you go through the book of Revelation. You'll see a lot of them kind of slot into place, particularly when we get into chapters 13, 14, 15 of Revelation. See a lot of this pop up again.
Okay, so 70 weeks prophecy done.
Questions, worries, concerns?
We'll see. Do you have the physical ability?
I have them.
I could have sworn there was a king with a P that they thought did it
P at the beginning of his name?
somewhere in his name.
For some reason the name Caspasian is coming to mind. But
The couch hit me. You just hit.
he's the only one.
Couch didn't hit me. Wait, what?
Vespasian or Vespasian?
Vespasian, thank you.
The couch. You hit the couch, and then I moved
Caspian
that way.
Sea.
And it hit.
Vespasian, the
Was the-
Roman emperor. And he did. He was a persecutor of the Jews.
From
You
me
did.
throwing
You
it.
did not intend to throw the water bottle, hit the couch, then hit my head.
How do you know?
All right.
Because you're not that good at throwing.
So next week
So I mean,
Are you?
huh?
Or are you?
we'll pick up
No, I'm
with
not saying that. I'm saying that.
the second lunch break
Throw it like
and the 7th trumpet.
the impressive. She's
Alright.
not that good at throwing.
Which is 10 and first half of 11, maybe? Something
Yes. Actually, I think it's the whole thing. It's chapters 10 and 11.
like that. Oh, okay.
I don't know why I bothered putting the verse numbers there.
Chapters 9 and 11.
You wanted to be thorough,
Yeah.
Thorough.
but he did. It wasn't consistent.
Let's all be thorough.
So, 2,000 years from now, when someone's reading this, they're going to
Cameron's
wonder
so
why it's not
stupid.
consistent, and they're going to read something else into it.
Yeah, it'll definitely last that long, for sure.
Just kidding. Just messing with you.
Well, hopefully not.
No, I know. Hopefully Jesus